Anger, why can't we control it? Can you guys all relate? Wasn't that great? Should we give them another hand? That song that we just listened to is a song called Mansion, and it's by one of my favorite artists. His name is NF, and rap isn't usually like my favorite kind of thing, but the words he says is amazing, and he's singing the whole time about his, he says that his mind is a mansion, and a mansion looks good on the outside like we do often, but on the inside he had all these rooms inside his mind that held different things, and he was saying that he's trapped inside these rooms in his mansion that he puts there and that he locks himself in. And he said in one of the lines in the song, he writes on the walls all of these things like anger, why can't I control it? And will he get it off in time? Will he be able to clean the walls off in time? And the words of that song is one of my favorites because we can all relate. We all look good on the outside, but often we have these rooms inside of us in our mansion that we need to deal with. And so today we're going to be talking about anger and about how we can address one of these rooms that we often lock ourselves in. So for those of you who weren't here last week, we started the series Raw. Raw is to be real, authentic, and whole. And we're talking about our 5 emotions that God created us with. So last week we spoke about happiness and how we can be happy with God when we have peace with God, ourselves, and others. And this week we're speaking about anger. And I don't know if I should have been offended that they asked me to speak about anger, but Wes got to speak about happiness and he gets to speak about love, and I get to speak about anger and sadness. So I was like, all right. And when people heard that I was going to be speaking about anger, I got given a whole list here of things they wanted me to address. So Stan wanted me to tell his brothers to control the road rage. Someone else wanted me to tell their mum to stop being such a grump. And someone else told me, nah, I'm just kidding. That's not what they said at all. So anger is in the Oxford Dictionary. I looked it up because when I thought about it, I'm like, I don't think I'm such an angry person, so I better look this up. So the Oxford Dictionary describes it like this. It says, anger is a strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, and hostility. And when I read that, I thought, I don't think my version of anger is so polite. But whatever your version is, maybe your version of anger is polite like that, or maybe it's this furious thing that nobody wants to be around. But whatever it is, it's actually a normal thing, and God actually created us with anger, and it's okay to have anger. The thing is the way we express it. Did you know that in the Bible it even speaks about anger? In fact, it speaks about it on an average of 234 times. That's a lot of anger in this book that we think is all about love. But the way we act it out, the way we express our anger, that's what we want to talk about today. We want to know about, how you're going to deal with it, and that's the key thing. You've all seen those parts in a movie. Has anyone seen the movie Hitch? There's a part in the movie where he gets angry and he gets out of the taxi and he slams the door, and the girl's in the taxi and they're about to drive off, and just as they drive off he realizes his jacket was actually shut in the door and it gets yanked off him. He looks like a fool in front of everyone. Or have you seen a part in a movie where someone tries to prove a point and they storm off, and just as they storm off in anger they roll their ankle in front of everyone? Or when someone gets angry and kicks something and they end up breaking their own toe and having to get a cast. I see John's pointing to Janelle. Maybe that's what happened to his arm. Either way, anger makes us look like idiots, right? Sorry, John. It can, though. Anger can make us all look ridiculous. I remember one time skiing with my older brother. So my older brother, Zach, he likes to think of himself as a professional skier. And there's 4 of us in our family, 4 kids, and he likes to think it's his role to have to explain to us, how to ski and do it like me. And he sort of takes this macho look about him. And so me and him are skiing, and we were up a lot higher than I wanted to be. Everything was looking pretty crazy. And he says, okay, so I'll take off and then you copy me. So I'm like, all right. So he takes off and he's going down. He's doing great. And next thing, he loses his balance and he starts just tumbling. And he was rolling and it Kind of looked a bit like a ballet performance because he was quite dramatic in the way he did it. And when he ended, he got up and he was furious, and he just got his ski pole and he just biffed it as far as he could, as hard as he could. He just threw it with all his force, only to realize that it was actually attached to his wrist, and it came back and smacked him in the back. He had a huge welt and cut. So then his anger took on a whole nother level as he blossomed into this full-grown rage, and he yanked it off, snapped the wrist thing, and just threw it over the cliff, never to be seen again. And I thought it was hilarious from my point. Of course I didn't laugh because I was a bit scared for my own safety. But I actually couldn't judge because I do things like that all the time. Anger makes us all look stupid. I remember this time when I was a lot younger, and I was really, really mad at my youngest brother. It seems like the brothers really bring it out in me. Maybe that's why I'm talking about anger. But anyway, so my younger brother, he did something, I can't remember what, but I was so mad at him that I stormed into his room. I cleared everything off his dresser in one big sweep, and it all smashed onto the floor. And then I stormed off and I slammed his bedroom door so hard that the door actually cracked down the middle. And then a few minutes later, I realized it was a pretty silly thing to do because we actually shared a bedroom. So I broke my own door. Anger has this crazy ability to just make us look like a crazy person and to turn us into something we're not. However, anger isn't always like that. Sometimes anger can be a whole nother level. It can be something that we don't laugh at or that doesn't make us look silly. Sometimes the situations or circumstances we find ourselves in can be huge and nothing but real, raw, deep emotion of anger. Anger could be something like when you experience a breakup or a separation from somebody that you've been with your whole life, it feels like, and you never thought you'd be in this situation. It just tips your whole world upside down. Without warning, that makes you lose all hope in humanity, and it replaces it with this deep anger inside you. It could be maybe when you lose somebody that you loved, that it's just so unfair. How could it be? You get so mad at God. You're just filled with this immense anger for allowing it to even happen. Maybe it's when you look around the world and all you see is chaos. You see disasters everywhere, every week. You see war in half of the world. This past week, I've experienced anger myself, and many of you probably have too, when you read about the Orlando shootings. Seems so unfair. Or there was this young singer who also got shot, and all she was doing was signing an autograph after a concert at only 22 years old. These sort of things make me hugely angry. This type of things bring out the finest version of anger inside me, and if you've experienced any of those things or something else, you know what I'm talking about. Anger can be consuming, it can be overwhelming, and it can be imprisoning. It can trap us in our rooms inside of our mansion. The way we respond to these things is so valid. Why wouldn't you get angry at these shootings? Why wouldn't you get angry when somebody leaves you? Why wouldn't you get angry when someone you love dies? Why wouldn't you be so mad at all this injustice in the world? You'd be crazy not to. When you have so much hurt in you, why wouldn't you just be angry? God has created us to feel that way, and it's okay to. And all of these emotions you express are normal. However, the way that we deal with these is the key thing, and that's what we want to look at today. When your anger is occupying one of these rooms inside your house, inside your mansion, like we spoke about, it hurts you, but not only does it hurt you, it hurts others around you. You become bitter as this anger sort of festers away inside of you. It settles into one of the rooms in your house and in your mansion, and it makes a home there. It takes up residence inside you. It begins to transform you, to transform your character, to transform your personality, to transform your temperament. It takes up its home inside you, and you begin to become a different person. Your friends don't want to be around you anymore. They're always hearing all of this negative talk that you're always bringing along with you, the gossip, and you're cynical about everything. You're always bringing the negative to the conversation, and you realize pretty soon no friends, no family want to be around you. Can anyone relate? I'm sure many of you have heard of the Hulk. The Hulk is this fictional superhero that Marvel Comics created. The Hulk is the ultra ego of this guy called Bruce Banner. He's just an everyday guy like you and me. He's a little bit socially withdrawn, a little bit emotional. He's reserved. But he physically transforms into this Hulk character whenever he's put under immense stress or anger. And it's usually against his own will. He can't control it. He involuntarily transforms into this monster that leads him to live a whole nother life separate from this Eric, what was his name? Bruce Banner. He lives a whole different life, and this Hulk begins to take control of him. And the anger inside him begins to come out. He's ripping his shirt, his clothes, and he turns into this green, huge monster. He's furious, he's angry, and he begins to come outside of us, and he has no control over it. The Hulk wreaks havoc everywhere he goes, with everyone, his relationships. He destroys things physically as well as inside himself. This green monster grows more and more potent the angrier he gets. How many of us have had these Hulk moments? Maybe we don't look like this, but when it just takes over you and you become this different version of yourself that you don't even want to be or you don't even know. The Hulk, if you let him, he will take residence up inside your mansion. He will find a room, he'll make himself a home there, and he will destroy you from the inside out the longer you leave him there. He'll affect all those in your way. Doesn't matter if it's your kids, your partner, your friends, your family, your work colleagues. He will destroy everything the longer you let him be there. The way I see it is that we have two choices. One, we can let this Hulk and this anger make us bitter and cynical that no one wants to be around. Or two, we can allow us to make us better. If you choose better, which I hope that you do, then I want to look at a famous character in the Bible who also chose to make his anger make him better. We find it in Psalms 142. We hear about this story of this guy who's frustrated and he's letting God know exactly how he feels. And the story is of David. So David had been treated so unjustly. It was so unfair. So David, he's known as this man after God's own heart. And he had this defeated Goliath. He'd done huge things with his life. He had become part of King Saul's family. He actually lived in his household. He even became best friends with Jonathan, who was King Saul's son. So things were going well for David, and then something happened, and Saul, he began to get jealous. He realized that, man, actually I think people like this David guy more than me, and I'm the king. He's like, I've killed thousands of men, but here David had actually killed tens of thousands of men. He got jealous and he's like, I can't compete with this guy. So Saul goes and he decides to make a plan to kill David, and Jonathan, the son, catches wind of this and he's like, oh man, this isn't good. So he goes and he tells David and he says, hey, my dad's actually planning to kill you, so you just need to get out of here. So David, he 1 minute he's loved by everyone, next he flees and he runs for the mountains and he escapes to this cave, and his brothers eventually hear that he's gone there and they join him, and some other relatives and other people, and everyone else who's running from something in their lives or afraid of something, they all end up living in this cave together, and David sort of becomes their leader. But can you imagine how you would feel if you were David? He's been promised since he was a child. Imagine if someone promised you and they were like, hey, you're actually going to be a king, you're going to have a whole kingdom, everyone's going to follow you and your God. And they told you all this, gave you all these promises, and then here you were running for your life, living in a cave. I'd be pretty mad if I was David. be pretty frustrated, and I think he was. And if you want to read with me, in Psalms 142, it starts at verse 1, and David says, I cry aloud to the Lord. I lift up my voice to the Lord for mercy. I pour out before him my complaints. Before him I tell him my troubles. See, David was just angry. He was hurting. He was just crying out. He was yelling out to God, and he was saying, he knew to take his complaints to God, and he was just letting him have it, holding nothing back. He poured out his troubles, his stress, his anger. And I wonder, maybe do we do the same thing? It continues on in verse 3, it says, my spirit grows faint within me. It is you who watch over my way. In the path where I walk, people have hidden snares for me. Look and see, there is no one at my right hand. No one is concerned for me. I have no refuge. No one cares for my life. David's just feeling down. Not only is he living in a cave, but he's just feeling low at his lowest point. And he's saying, man, my friends have all left me. And maybe we can relate when we're feeling like that, where our friends have left us, our family has left us, people have let us down. He said, there's no one on my right hand. No one is concerned for me at all. He's just feeling low and giving up. But then in verse 5, he says, I cry to you, Lord. I say, you are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living. So despite what's going on, how low he's feeling, that he's crying out to God, he's hurting and no one's been there for him, but he says to the creator of the universe, who knows his case, he cries out to him and he says, you are my refuge, who I run to. Verse 6, it says, listen to my cry, for I am in desperate need. Rescue me from those who pursue me, for they are too strong for me. Do we do the same thing? Do we expect that God is going to rescue us when it's above us, it's overwhelming, it's over our head? When we're in such a slump, do we still expect God to be there? Verse 7, it says, set me free from my prison, that I may praise your name. We're constantly in this prison inside our own head. We're in this mansion that maybe we look good on the outside, but in the prison we're locking ourselves in on the inside. Do we ask God to set us free? And this is my favorite part, because not only does he say, set me free from my prison so that I can go and be happy and enjoy life, but he actually says that I can praise your name. So it's not even about himself, it's more than that. He still knows who to go to in his anger, and he knows why he wants to go to God, because God had the better plan. So who do you turn to in your anger? Do you turn to God no matter what, like David did, even though he was feeling so low, even though he was living in a cave, he was getting treated unjustly, he had no one there for him? Do we turn to God, who cares enough about us, to hear our complaints, to accept us in our anger and when we're being treated unjustly? Do you believe in him enough that you expect him to still set you free from this prison and be the refuge you run to? See, it's only us who's holding us inside that prison, inside that room of anger. God's not holding you there, and there's no lock on the door. It's yourself who's keeping you there. See, if your troubles that you're going through and your anger and frustration doesn't actually lead you to God and to go deeper and further into that cave, then you're actually missing the whole point of the lesson that God's trying to teach you in your anger. Let your loneliness, anger, and despair make you cry out to the Lord to bring your soul out of prison so that you may praise his name like David did. God knows that you're there. He already knows how you're feeling in maybe the room that you're trapped in, but he still wants us to go to him, to allow him to come into the room. He knows that you're trapped in the mansion, so next time you feel like you're stuck in a cave or getting treated unjustly like David, why not just yell out all your complaints like he did? Cry out to God like he did. Tell him exactly what's on your mind like he did. Maybe not all of us here need some, we might not be at the level of anger management where we need some tips or go see someone, but every one of us actually goes through anger. It's a normal thing. And every one of us needs to have a few things up our sleeves with how we're going to deal with it. Do you know what it is that helps you when you're angry? For me, when I'm angry, I usually like to go for a run, listen to some music, or just get outside somewhere in nature and clear my head. Seems to work for me, and maybe it's different for you. Maybe it's playing an instrument or writing things down and keeping a journal. Maybe it's that you need to go talk to someone who you trust. Maybe it's the complete opposite and you want to go just have some time to clear your head by yourself, to stop distracting yourself with other things and spend some time alone. But whatever it is, you need to know what it is so you can turn to it when you're in a moment like that. Maybe you need to relax more. Are you constantly busy, like Roseanne was saying, where God actually can't even get through to you because you're filling up all of your day and your time with the computers, the phones, the radio, the noise that's going on in life? Maybe you need to change your environment. Are you still in the exact place that made you angry in the first place? Are you still sitting there festering away? Maybe you need a fresh perspective. Do you engage in enough physical activity? A lot of people are like, that's not really for me, but it is. It's awesome. Just go for a walk, get outside, get some air going on. Do you get enough sleep at night? If you're sleeping and you sleep with your phone right next to you or the radio on or something, are you really planning on having a good sleep? Maybe you need to try keeping a journal, to write things down just to get them off your chest so they're not constantly running around in your mind. Maybe you need to start surrounding yourself with some better people, some positive people who are going to feed into your life, who make you feel better. Whatever it is, you need to find something so next time anger triggers inside of you, you have a plan to go to, something to focus on that's outside of yourself, that you're passionate about, that you can help others as well as yourself. You know, while it's important to have all these practical steps that we just went through, it's actually not the only thing. And actually it's impossible that if we don't allow God to come into that room and that we've locked ourselves in, if we don't allow God to come into that, it doesn't matter what else you do. It's going to be impossible for you to get out of it. You need to allow God to come into it as well and allow Him to take up residence there so He can push anything else out and He can bring you out of where you've locked yourself in. You know, as we've heard in Psalms, as David says it, God delivered him from that. He says, God is my refuge. I know you will deliver me. Look at the last time when you tried to deal with a time you got angry. Look at how you deal with it yourself. Maybe like me, breaking my own bedroom door or messing my own bedroom floor. Look at the last time you tried on your own. You just look silly or you get nowhere. But with God, I promise you it'll be a different story. Take your cues from Jesus. There's one of my favorite quotes. What we find so hard to do in dealing with people and dealing with our emotions and dealing with anger is actually something that Jesus is best at. Why would we not turn to Him? And not only turn to Him, but also learn from Him in the way He does things. If anyone had the right to be angry, it was Jesus. Man, this guy, if I was him, I would have been furious. He got treated so unjustly. He had done nothing wrong. He hadn't harmed anyone. He spent his whole life traveling around, teaching and adding wisdom to people's lives, healing people. He accepted everyone. He forgave people. He gave them love. He blessed people everywhere he went. He set this example of what it meant to be pure, of perfect, and to avoid all temptation. Yet, they plotted to kill him. Judas, one of his trusted followers, actually betrayed him. Jesus was arrested and beaten brutally. Peter, one of his friends, denies that he even knew him. The soldiers mocked him, and then eventually, after all this, they crucified him and killed him in the most horrific way. And as he's hanging there, his last breath that he said was, he responded and he said, "You fools, you've stuffed up everything. You're all going to hell. I can't believe you're so stupid." No, he didn't respond like that. In Luke 23, verse 33, he says, Jesus responds after all that and he says, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." How many of you would be able to respond that way after being treated so unjustly? I don't know about you, but I want that same spirit in me. That I want to be able to respond the same way. And you can't have that same spirit in you unless you have God in you. If we want to be real, if we want to be authentic, and most importantly, whole, then we can't achieve this by ourselves. It's impossible. We need to know Jesus, and not only know Jesus, but we need to ask him to come inside to take the anger out. To have that same spirit in us that we can get out of the cave, out of the prison, out of the room of anger that we've trapped ourselves in, get the resentment out and choose to be better rather than bitter. You know, there's so many times in my life where I have been angry, and I'm sure all of you have a story or hundreds of stories of a time when you've been really angry. And there's one time in my life when I actually experienced this long-lasting, raw, real, deep anger. And none of us are immune to it. When I was 18, I remember being in the park with one of my friends, and I lived in New Plymouth at the time, but I was in Auckland just for a weekend hanging out. And next thing you know, my dad drives to the park, and I'm like, what is he even doing here? Like, I'm in Auckland hanging with some friends, but he turns up and he had this look on his face that I hadn't seen before, and I was like, oh man, what's happening? Next thing you know, he tells me that one of my best friends, Jay, had died in a car crash. And I was just like, what? What are you telling me? And he had to say it again and again and again, and so many times, but yet it couldn't sink in. There was no words for me. And I was just disbelief. All I could respond was with, no, you're wrong, you're lying. And I was getting angrier the way it was too. I'd just seen him 3 days earlier before I left New Plymouth. He's only 21 years old. How could he possibly have died? You know, his life was cut short, and I was like, no way would this happen. Why would God allow a 21-year-old guy to die before he got a chance to be a dad, to be an uncle, before he could be, you know, experience life and live the potential that God had planned for him? In fact, how would God allow him to die before he even had the opportunity to know God? What kind of God was this? I had all these questions. I was angry. I later found out that Jay also had been drinking, and that's why he crashed. And then I was angry at Jay. I was thinking, why would he drink and drive? That's so selfish. What an idiot. Why would he do that? He crashed 300 meters before his own driveway. I was furious at this injustice, and I had all these questions for God. I had all these questions that God didn't actually seem to be answering at all, and so I pushed him away. I not only pushed God away, but I pushed all my friends away too, in fear that I'd lose someone else close to me. I was angry in every part of me. I didn't cry out to God at all. In fact, I just didn't even care. Instead, I hid inside the mansion, inside my fear, where I let fear and anger take control and residence of my mansion. They lived in every single room inside of me, and I was happy with that. You know, how can you escape from a room in a mansion that you have locked yourself in? There's no key that's been there and thrown away. It's actually me who's locked myself in and holding it. It seems impossible, and it is. It's impossible to get outside of it unless you have God with you. Today, I want us to end this talk by giving you an opportunity to respond to the mansion, to the room, to the anger and the prison that you have locked yourself in. I want to give you guys an opportunity just to reflect between you and God. To close your eyes now, I'd like it if all of you just close your eyes and take a moment to think about the anger that you have, the rooms that you've locked yourself in, and who you're letting take residence inside of you. You know, God, He wants relationship with you. He's a Father who loves and cares for you no matter what. He definitely doesn't want you to choose to be bitter. He wants you to choose to be better. I just want you to close your eyes and answer these questions to yourself. You don't need to put your hand up or speak it out loud or anything. This is just a moment for you to be able to have some quietness for once in your life and just to think about these questions between you and God. What triggers can you identify that make you angry? What is God telling you about those triggers today? What is the most recent episode of anger that you have had, and how long did it last? What is God telling you about that episode? Maybe it's time to let it go. What situations provoke your anger? What do you think it is that God's telling you about that anger? What Hulk monster came in and ruins every single thing in your life the more and more he grows in you? He ruins your friendships, he ruins your family. What is God telling you about that Hulk that you're letting take control of your life? Who do you need to forgive? You know, unforgiveness eats away at you day in and day out. The longer you allow it, it will keep you a prisoner. What is God saying about that? Who do you need to forgive? How can you learn to lean into God and to give all your anger over to Him so that you can live the way He intended you to be, free so that you can praise His name? Just while your eyes are closed, I'd just like to give you a final challenge. You know, I want to challenge you guys that next time you find yourself angry, that you learn to cry out to God from exactly where you are. It doesn't matter if you're in a cave like David or if you're lying on your kitchen floor in a pile of tears and snot. It doesn't matter. Give it all over to God. If you have doubts, if you have unanswered questions, give it all over to God like I should have done. When you find yourself angry at God, do all you can to reject that natural instinct to distance yourself from Him like I did. Rather, run to Him. He understands our anger. In fact, He created it. His heart is breaking as much as yours and mine is. Dear God, we just ask that you be with us now. Help us to direct our anger in the right place to a God who cares about us, who created us, who is a Father for us, who has the best plan for us. God, help us not to give anger a room in our mansion. Help us to always remember who to turn to with our anger so that we can be the best versions of ourselves, not a monster. And God, we just thank you for the constant reminder that you are here for us, no matter if we're in a cave or if we've locked ourselves in a prison. We hand it all over to you today and ask that you take control of our anger. Amen.